Welcome to the NBA Coast to Coast podcast brought to you by thelines.com. Coming to you from the West Coast, Josh Lander, joined as always by Nate Weitzer on the East Coast. And we are finally back from an all-star break that was interesting. Maybe that's not the word. Either way, we're pushing on here. We've got a bunch of futures to talk about, some awards, some winners, conference winners, make the playoffs, bets, that type of stuff here. So make sure to like and subscribe to that page so you can continue to follow along as soon as these games come back on Thursday of the week right after the All-Star break, where Nate and I bring you a couple games and our player props that we are staying wicked hot for you guys on. Also want you to head to thelines.com. Everything we talk about there and more is on thelines.com, and you can use that odds finder tool that we have, find all the best player props and otherwise that are available across these U.S. sports books. Like I said, we're going to be talking about futures for these teams here, maybe some award stuff as well in just a bit, but we are going to kick things off with, talking about a few of the bets that we like here in terms of, like I said, teams to either make the playoffs, some conference seedings as well, some of the best bets that Nate and I are looking at here to put some money on for these futures. So, Nate, let's just jump right into it. I know there was a bunch of trades. We all know Kyrie's on the Mavs. We all know the Lakers look a lot better. Josh Hart is on the Knicks and one of my favorite players of all time. Something we should mention here is that Russ is probably going to the Clippers here. It seems like he wants to go there. And despite the fact that Kawhi didn't really seem to want him, which is in the rumor mill, Paul George did want him, and that seemed to be the trump card there. So he is likely going to the Clips, which I think will affect a bunch of the stuff. Norman Powell is up for Sixth Man of the Year. We'll talk about that when we get to awards here in a minute. But the Clippers, I think, is maybe a good place to start for us, Nate, as that's a team that we are both eyeing to put some money on for futures.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not even going to mince words and say that like betting the champion right now or the conference winner is just like lighting your money on fire, and don't do it. This is the most wide open an NBA season has ever been, I think, in terms of who's going to win the title. I don't think anybody has any idea. It's literally going to be a second season. So that's why we're just trying to, play some wagers on how this season's going to end. And right now,
Sure.
Yeah, you can short the Clippers, basically. Like they sputtered for a long time. We know this, but they're 10-4 over the last 14 with the best offensive rating in the league. And they have some quality wins in there. Two of those losses are against the Bucks, who we can talk about later. It's another team just like turning the corner, coming on real strong here. So there's a few angles to just bet on them being better than the competition. I mean, it's even money for them to finish fourth seed or higher. I think you get even better odds for them to take the third seed away from the Kings. And that's kind of what I'm looking at. I mean, the Kings have the fourth most difficult strength of schedule the rest of the way. Clippers get 2 against them right out of the gates here. Clippers have fewer games left to play, which means more rests for them, which is obviously very key. They've actually played the most games of anybody before the break, right? They have 61 games. They're getting Russ in there as some extra reinforcements. I don't know. I mean, I think that actually makes me shy away more from like the Clippers winning the championship, but I do think that that's a little extra juice. And we just really liked how they looked coming into the All-Star break. We picked them a few times in a row and came through, beat Phoenix. Just the way they shook it up at the All-Star at the trade deadline made them more physical, etc.
Got a backup center in Plumlee.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, their schedule is middle of the pack by the numbers, but again, it's the rest. They only have 3 back-to-backs remaining. They have a stretch where 9 of 10 are at home in March, and the only road is at Portland, which might start to tank, I guess, at this point. But I mean, by the numbers, they have a tough strength of schedule just up there with the Kings, but I think they're going to be passing the Kings, and I do think they're going to be able to hold off the Mavs or whoever else might get that 4th seed.
Yeah, so I mean, to get to brass tacks for a minute, like what we're saying here for the Clips, right? I will say on DraftKings, and I think they have the best odds for the Clips right now to win the Pacific Division plus 230. So when you start there, you have to bring up that Kevin Durant is on the Suns, and I said at the top of the show, we know Kyrie Irving's on the Mavs. I probably should have also thrown out there that Kevin Durant is on the Suns. We just don't know when he's coming back, and he said he felt better on an interview at All-Star Weekend, but like players aren't always the ones who dictate when they come back, etc. So I don't know when you can expect him back. But if you look at the standings as they sit right now, Phoenix is just getting terrible odds to win this Pacific Division, even though it's everybody's in the thick of it all together between the Kings, Clippers, and the Suns at this point. And I believe you mentioned there's only one game separating the Kings and the Clips, and then the Suns are a half game back there because they have more games left to play than the Clippers do. I'm not even really talking about the Warriors right now. Just in terms of those three teams, the Kings, it's just they're plus 450. The Clips are plus 230, like I said, and the Suns are what, like minus somewhere in the like minus 175. Really bad odds for them to win because everyone's just expecting KD to come back and do his thing. We're saying, I mean, the Clippers have the guys to guard someone like KD. They have the guys to guard this team as well as anybody else can, when they really turn it on defense, and the presence of Paul George and Kyrie and Kawhi at the same time really helps that out. I love the addition of Eric Gordon, love having a backup center in Plumlee there as well. Don't love Russ because I think you have Norman Powell, and he's been awesome. Is up for Sixth Man of the Year, plus 350 for him, although Malcolm Brogdon seems to be running away with it at this point. Either way, I would say the Clips to do that. At this point, I know we're skipping over finals winners because it's like whatever at this point, but it is juicy if you want to look at someone like the Clippers. By the time you get to them, it's plus 900 as like the fifth favorites here to win the finals. So I think if you are saying that, we like them to make kind of a run, I think there's that for them to come out of the West is plus 450. At that point, doubling your odds for them to win the championship. Might as well take both bets if you feel confident about them. So I just think there is a lot of upside to the Clips, like you said, despite maybe a difficult strength of schedule the rest of the way. I think all the games that these guys have missed between Kawhi and Paul George, you can bank on especially Kawhi being super available, barring any kind of unforeseen injury at this point. So go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to just get to my favorite bet here.
Please.
And it's just because the odds are so juicy here in the East. Is the Nets up to plus 800 to miss the playoffs? Plus 600, plus 800 implies there's an 86% chance that they make the playoffs at this point. And by the numbers, that might be correct. I mean, 538 has that number up there too as the percentage because they have such a healthy lead. I mean, but it's only 2.5 games to be out of the play-in. It's 6.5 to be, not be the worst team in the play-in. And I know you like Toronto to make the playoffs. Toronto being the worst team in the play-in. I could see them catching Brooklyn here. They're starting to play much better. But look, Brooklyn, this is like a perfect opportunity to just say this isn't a numbers game. This is a team that just completely gutted their roster, that has not won a road game without KD and Kyrie. And I don't really expect them to. I mean, they're 6-11 since KD just went down. Kyrie dragged them to 2 road wins. And then look at their 24 games left. It's the 7th toughest strength of schedule right out of the gates. At Chicago, Atlanta, Knicks, Celtics, and home versus Milwaukee. You also have road games at Miami, Minnesota, OKC, whatever. They're all games I wouldn't really expect the Nets to win. I mean, on paper, I know they've been kind of spunky with the occasional. The fact of the matter is they need Cam Thomas or Spencer Dinwiddie or both to have the game of their life every night to win. That's where they're at in terms of their roster at this point. Jacques Vaughn is a great coach, and I think he will do his best to cobble together some wins here. But I don't really see them hanging on to this lead. I think they will be in the play-in. And then if you give me plus 600 for Atlanta, Washington, Toronto, whatever, to beat them in a do-or-die situation, I love that. I love those odds. I mean, it's plus 115 for them to just be in the play-in, to just be sixth or lower, to not hold the 5 seed where they're at right now. Like, are you kidding me? Yeah. Why do we expect like the seasons to just freeze? They have 24 games left. They have to win some of these games. I do not see them really being much closer than 12-12 or worse.
Yeah, it's fair. I mean, the unknown that you would be betting on more than anything is what are you going to continue to get from this team? I would say 3 games now is kind of like as they've been the roster that they've been throwing out there is the guys that you can expect to play for the rest of the season as well. It's just like you said in the games that they've won over, basically since KD went down and really since Kyrie got traded and it was around the 6th of February. They didn't have him for a few games before as well, but on the 6th is when he got traded. They've lost 4 of 6 since that period and are struggling a bit. They did, like you said, the reason they beat the Heat, Mikal Bridges had 45 points, probably more of an anomaly. Love dude, and he definitely had something to prove in that game. But that was an anomaly. And then the other one against the Bulls, like who knows what's going to happen against them. I could see them winning again, honestly, in Chicago out the gate. Atlanta's not a team that I think either of us or anybody wants to put their money on. They're so bad on defense, and they didn't figure it out between DeJounte and Trae Young. It's still one of them doing really well versus both of them seeming to succeed at the same time. And then really, after that, the play-in for them is what I think we're both expecting. I think Miami is just the 2.5 games back of the Nets. The Knicks could overtake them after just spanking them as well 2 games ago. So I think both those teams, I think we expect to do better than Brooklyn the rest of the way. For Miami, Atlanta, Washington, Toronto, the teams right now in the play-in. Yeah, I would just like to talk about Toronto for 2 seconds because I do think that they're a team that could even overtake Brooklyn at this point. Maybe that's a bit of a stretch, to be honest. They're sitting, let's see, it's like 6.5 games back of Brooklyn. I don't expect Brooklyn to just go on a complete losing spree necessarily entirely. I still think that they have the guns to win the games they should win it, 2 in a row against Houston as well for the Nets that they have left. But Toronto right now to make the playoffs is plus money, which I really like at plus 160, or you can get plus 184 actually on FanDuel is where it's the best right now. It's been a weird up and down season for them, but they are 10th in the play-in right now. And I think they can get a little bit higher than that. They still have 3 games against Washington. Haven't played them yet this season, but they did go 3-1 against them last year. They've won 5 of 6 going into the break, even though there was really only one quality win in there versus Memphis. They just needed some wins under their belt in a row, and putting it together a good streak was helpful. A bit of a hard schedule, but I think they're making the play-in tournament. And I think they're super well suited to be able to get a 7 or an 8 seed and even chase down to Atlanta at this point, if you do believe in them, which they still have 2 games there against them. I think you can expect Miami to kind of overtake. I don't know about the Knicks, but between one of the Knicks and the Nets, I think they get at least a top 6 seed, if not the 5th seed at that point. And then, there's just not enough room for everybody in the East on that side. So the Wizards, I kind of believe in them enough, but like I said, they have a ton of game against the Raptors. So plus 184 for the Raps to get into the play-in tournament and then win 1, maybe 2 games if they have to, I think is a good enough bet with those amount of odds.
And it's just exactly what I'm saying, that like even if they don't surpass Brooklyn, if they wind up in that 10-9 or 9-8, whatever the matchup winds up being, absolutely would rather have Toronto. I don't care where the game is. Barclays isn't even a home court. I just think Brooklyn's going to get knocked out of this thing. I mean, they could surprise people, but let's keep talking play-in. Let's look at the West and the Lakers at even money to just be in the play-in tournament, right? You don't need them to win. You just need them to not miss the playoffs, which would be plus 140 if you're going to take that. But I don't really think OKC. I mean, they're certainly capable of holding that last spot, but I think the Lakers are much better at this point than they were. They could either climb to that 10 or 9 spot. They've got a bit of a hole to dig out of, but only 2 games back of OKC, or 3.5 out of getting out of the play-in tournament.
Yeah.
But I think it's a perfect opportunity to middle them in that sense, that they're not good enough to like catch Dallas, to like go on a winning streak in a tear here when LeBron can barely make 2 games in a row. Anthony Davis, you never know, could go down again.
Yep.
But I do think they will claw their way into this play-in situation for the drama of it. So even money is certainly interesting. I mean, Portland and Utah are on a complete downward spiral. So those teams are slightly in front of them. So we think they'll hop them, and then it's between them and OKC. Does OKC even really want to be in the play-in tournament, or they want a lot more lottery odds?
Yeah, and you start with Utah, Portland. They're going to jump those 2 teams. They're a game and a half of both of them. Utah doesn't have it anymore with the guys that they, losing Vanderbilt, losing Beasley, big losses for them. And then the Blazers, I don't know what they're doing. They traded away their team in a season that Dame is putting up the best season he's ever had. I think he's just pissed. So we're going to continue to bet on Dame the rest of the season. His props been at like 35.5 points. That's the only reason he hasn't been all over our player props every night. But maybe we should. So either way, it's bad. It's just all dysfunction there. Between the Thunder, the Warriors, the Timberwolves, and the Pellies, like they're going to overtake one of them, right? Because if you look at the Warriors, we don't know when Steph's coming back still. I just don't like the look of them. Timberwolves have been playing so much better. Is Cat just not coming back this season? That's a big question. I just think there's questions there. You combine them with the questions of the Pellies. Zion is not coming back for what David Griffin has dubbed weeks after the All-Star break and when we return. So it's not like he's coming back in the month of February and maybe not until late March that you're seeing Zion in there, which means that they're still going to have to play another like 12 to 15 games without him. And they are not good without him this season, including they put together a little bit of a streak when BI came back with one quality win in there, but then back to the Lakers, if the game that they just played against the Pelicans is any indication of how they're going to play when they have finally had LeBron back playing with these new guys like Vanderbilt, D'Angelo Russell, and Malik Beasley and Rui Hachimura, then I think they're good things to come, right? And that means that they're going to get into the playoffs. They're going to be better than one of those like 5 teams that we just said. And then I don't think they're good enough to surpass any of the teams that are in 4, 5, or 6 right now, which is the Clips, Suns, and Mavs, who all got so much better that I just don't think it's a good opportunity for anybody for the Lakers to be able to jump them and get out of the play-in and into the actual playoffs with a 6 seed or better. So the minus 110 even money, depending on where you find it, for them to make the play-in tournament, really, really good odds right now just to get that. So I'm gonna actually go back to the East for a minute, Nate, and talk about another bet I like that you mentioned briefly. The Bucks, they're a half game back of the Celtics. For them to get the 1 seed in the East at the end of this season is plus 220, a slightly easier schedule than the Celtics. And really at the end, I mean, we should caution with Giannis is a little bit hurt, but the report is as soon as he's not feeling pain in his wrist, then he's coming back to play. Maybe he misses a game or 2, but I wouldn't quite worry about that as much being the issue. Chris Middleton has had time to heal. The plus 220 for them to overtake the Celtics by half a game the rest of the way is just too good to pass up more than anything. Am I right?
I think so. I mean, you're betting on Giannis's health because they were incredible when he had been back in there, and they were very shaky without him. But I do like it. I expect them to to finish stronger than the Celtics if he's upright, and that's why I think you might want to take the plus odds on Mike Brown, Coach of the Year, over Joe Mazzulla maybe, because I think if the Celtics don't hold that number 1 seed, I don't think the writers are going to give it to him. But it's not my favorite angle. I'll just look at a couple other specials before we move on to awards that DraftKings has. And I want to be on this soapbox again. Eastern Conference over Western Conference at even odds, minus 105 right now. And it's really, are you worried about the Suns or the Nuggets at this point? And the Celtics handled KD last playoffs. That's not necessarily impossible. The Bucks can handle KD or Joker if Giannis is healthy. And the Sixers, I mean, if James Harden's able to get that monkey off his back in the terms of performing in the playoffs, if they're peaking at the right time, they're a championship caliber team as well. I will say, and I think it's just worth it there. Also, only slightly worse odds on, again, fading the Suns, Nuggets, and Clippers is not a first-time champion. Someone who wins the title will be a repeat champion. And then there's the state-by-state stuff, which is always fun, but, I mean, minus 420 right now. Not that interesting. Yeah. So anything on that, or you just want to talk awards?
Yeah, no, I think the Eastern Conference, you're betting on the Celtics or the Bucks, and I think that's fine. I think they both look super strong and would be well ready for any of the teams that they'd face, like you said, in the West that you like as a favorite. The Suns, they could get hot, man. I don't really want to predict exactly where they're going to finish. They're going to get in the playoffs, and when they get there, like, we could be talking about them in the same way that we were so scared of what could have been with Harden, Irving, and KD in Brooklyn. It's probably a little bit better, at least better suited in terms of the 3 that you now have in Phoenix, better suited in terms of where they all play on the floor and how they can play off of each other. So I'd be a little bit scared of the Suns when betting on the Eastern Conference, is my only sort of cautionary tale for that. But no, I'm down.
One thing I want to throw out a cautionary tale is just that's just not how sports works typically. You can't just like add Kevin Durant and expect it to just immediately translate to a championship when you have a month and a half to get on the same page and you don't have much of a supporting cast around them. In my experience, like it doesn't, I can't really picture it. It's just like, oh, KD at the deadline, boom, championship. I feel like next year they will win the championship after maybe adding a couple pieces, getting a bit healthier. But that's just why I'm fading them at this point.
Fair. And the only slight counterpoint I would give is if there was a player in the history of the NBA that you could add to any team and be like, go win a championship, it's that man. So either way, let's talk about some awards. Unfortunately, it's not that exciting to talk about regular season MVP anymore, and really hasn't been for a while. Nikola Jokic is minus 250. Probably worth it just to throw a bit on there, even though you don't get the return, as it would take a really, really crazy catastrophe, knock on wood, that doesn't happen, for him to fall out of contention there. If you wanted to bet on Joel Embiid as he continues to make a run for things at plus 450, you're once again kind of banking on Nikola to get hurt. And don't be such a sour grape like that. That sounds like an unfortunate bet that you'd have to root for that, right? So anything on the MVP, or can we kind of get, even honestly, rookie of the year, I should also mention Paolo is the best player of that class. It's not really close. He looks like a 10-year vet, the way that he can score and play sort of playmaker for them as well. He's at like minus 1,000. So anything you want to say about either of those two awards, or maybe we should just move to most improved?
I mean, I agree if you get minus 250 or better to just bet Jokic right now, because Giannis is going to miss time. Luka his odds already doubled when he missed time / Kyrie joined the team. And Embiid's not going to play every single game the rest of the way. It's just like you're betting on health and just, the horses to maintain their current position in this race. So why not get 2.5 odds there?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, I'm good with that for him. Most improved is also maybe interesting. I mean, it's between Lauri Markkanen and Shai Gilgeous, I would say at this point. Plus 135 for SGA, plus 130 for Lowry. Those are both on DraftKings, so make sure you're checking which one has the best odds there on that odds finder tool. But do you have a strong opinion either way? Do you lean one way or the other for these guys?
I can't believe you left out your third place guy, your favorite Knick of all time, Jalen Brunson, at plus 300 coming in hot since he was snubbed from the All-Star team. 32.5 points a game and a 140 offensive rating. So that is better than both of them. And he did kind of come out of nowhere in terms of being a sixth man, and then now just the best player on a team that could finish fifth, like we're talking about in the East. I again would just fade Markkanen at this point, even though he has kind of come out of nowhere. We've seen this award tends to go to like somebody who goes from an all-star to a superstar, not someone who comes out of nowhere to be an all-star and then is the last pick in the all-star draft, for what that's worth. I guess his peers are not that impressed with what he's doing in just a high usage role on Utah, but SGA has turned into an absolute superstar. I mean, he should be all NBA, right? First team all NBA at this point, maybe second team. And that, you can't not enough. So if you're giving me the same odds there, I think you just bet SGA at this point.
And I think they could stick around in that play-in race for the play-in tournament. I do think that's somewhat relevant. If SGA drags that team, there's some good players, really like Jalen Williams. But if he's the far and away a superstar, first team, probably going to get second team, but would love to see him make a first team. It will also depending on what Steph does when he comes back. But either way, like if he does that at that level with the 30 plus a game and just the dominance with which he's played, then you feel it. The thing about Jalen is I do think the fact that he was so good in the playoffs and that his on court when Luka was off court numbers were so good in that stretch as well. It was like we kind of already knew that like he was going to go somewhere and get starter money, and he's proving it. He's definitely proving it, but it's more like he's proving what we thought about him rather than sort of coming out of nowhere in that sense. That's the only reason I don't mention him in that sense. But I guess, for coach of the year, you made a pretty solid case that like Joe Mazzulla would not get it if these Celtics don't get first. But at plus 170, like I do think the Kings are probably about to fall behind two teams in their division in terms of the Clips and the Suns at this point. So I don't know that you love Mike Brown there. And then you look at Michael Malone at plus 260, where if the Nuggets are the one seed in that that conference, a lot of players coming back from injury. What do you do with this? I'm just already going, if you want to bet on this, Joe Mazzulla at plus 170, I could still see him getting it if they come in second in the East.
Yeah, it's more narrative driven than anything else. And I mean, there's a good case for Mazzulla or Mike Brown because of the narrative, because Mike Brown has made an awful defensive team into a contender and they're snapping that playoff drought. But The reason I talked myself out of saying like strong take, fade Missoula is just the narrative there. He just became the official head coach. He's taken this finals team and perhaps made them even better adjustments. He's doing a better job than Udoka. So, I mean, I do think he's the favorite for good reason, but yeah, I'm staying clear of the Coach of the Year subjective award at this point.
Totally, yeah, I'm not with it either. Sixth man of the year, Malcolm Brogdon is -160. Is there a chance that he enters the starting lineup? And either way, -160, like maybe you think he's a lock enough to take that. I'm not really there with it. Norman Powell at +360, I don't love because Russell Westbrook's coming to LA. And even if Norman stays in his same style of role, things are just about to get weirder there. And then Tyrese Maxey at +400. Not even going to really continue on because I don't think Russ or Benny Matz or Jordan Poole have a shot at this point. But between those three, is there anything that tickles your fancy? The only thing I would even consider is the -160 of Malcolm Brogdon because of the fact that if he stays in that role for the rest of the season, he's probably got it.
Yeah, it's going to be Brogdon. I think that's pretty sure. It's similar to Jokic. Like if everything stays the way it is, then he's going to be the champion for sure in terms of that award. So I think -160 is fine.
Yep, and then Triple J -190 on the Defensive Player of the Year. Kind of seems like he's running away with it. That's also somewhat narrative driven. Obviously, stats are a big part of it. But the only other guy we look at really, I think, is Brook Lopez at +400, unless there's a dark horse I'm not considering.
Yeah, maybe if Giannis is hurt and the Bucks just carry themselves through with defense, and it's just like really evident how Lopez is doing that. If the Grizzlies continue to lose games like wildfire without Steven Adams, there's a chance that flips. But yeah, there's a reason these are just quick hitters for us at the end here. We got our strong take on most improved and the other futures talk.
All right, I won't make you answer any more awards questions then. We're fine here. That is all the time that we have for you guys. Definitely make sure to like and subscribe to that page. We're back with a big slate on Thursday night when we get back into these games here to finish the season with about 23, 25 games, depending on who you are. So until we see you next, happy betting.